Hi, Commissioner Allen. Would you like to test your audio?
Can you hear me okay?
We hear you. You're just a little quiet.
Okay, sorry, I'm under the weather, so I'll try to project my voice as much as I can.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning, I'm here.
Yeah, me too. Hey, Commissioner Brooks.
I was just about to bang your gavel.
Well, you couldn't bang it without me being up here.
Yeah, I could.
Well, they just, I don't know about that, they just beat you.
No, you don't. Hit your vote buttons over there, get them ready. Yep. Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devon Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constituted quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Brian Weaver from Peace Lutheran Church in Hurst. Thank you for coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Thank you, Judge Whitley and Tarrant County Commissioners for this opportunity. And as I think about the business that y'all have to conduct on a weekly basis and here in court, I am reminded of the words of Psalm 82. The psalmist writes, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? But give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the rights of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy, and deliver them from the hand of the wicked. For they neither have knowledge nor understanding, they walk about in darkness, and all the foundations of the earth are shaken. But I said, you are God, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, just like men, you shall die and fall away like any prince. But arise, O God, and judge the earth, for you alone shall inherit all the nations. Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, you desire the health, the well-being, and the prosperity of all people. In your wisdom and providence, you have blessed us with our beloved Tarrant County, and with people who can lead us, serve us, and move us forward with great wisdom, compassion, and spirit. I pray that you continue to lead this court with all that wisdom and selfless desire to serve the people you have brought to our communities. Give them courage to tackle issues others refuse to address. Give them compassion for the pains and struggles of those they are serving. And through their faithfulness to our community, work good for all, that we may truly experience your blessing in our daily lives, now and for generations to come. In your holy and righteous name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have several announcements as it relates to the agenda this morning. We'll start, and there's some that we're going to remove from the consent agenda because we have audience participation forms on those. So let me start with the administrator's office. On item number 4, this is a notice of a public hearing. We're going to ask that that be removed from consent to hear from the audience. Also under the administrator section, item 9A14, this is the approval of out-of-state travel requests. We're going to ask that to be removed from the consent agenda. Under the criminal district attorney's office, the item number 1, which is E1, This is the utilization of forfeiture funds for investigative purposes. We have an audience participation form on that. And on facilities, on item F4, this is the ratification and approval of a request for the March for Our Lives, utilization of the historic courthouse East Lawn. That event has already occurred. It occurred on June 11th.
So we're moving, but we're removing that from consent.
Yes, all of these are consent, Your Honor.
Okay.
There is one under facilities that we're going to ask that we hold, and that is also a consent item, but we're not going to take any action on that. And that is item F6, which is the approval of a change order to Morales Construction. And then also under facilities management, item 8, which is the acceptance of the donation of surplus furniture. We're going to remove that from consent. Under purchasing, J1, this is bid 2022-163. We're going to consider that, but there is a revised court communication in your red folder. This is the sale of recycled paper. Also under, this is going to be under purchasing also. This is item J13. We're going to remove that from consent as it relates to fleet fuel cars for Precinct 7. Under the tax assessor collector, item L1, which is the property tax refunds, we're going to remove that from consent. And also, members of court, we're going to be taking several things out of order. When we get to the administrator section, we're going to move to the briefing item. And we're going to take up item B, which is TCDRS annual report. Representative from TCDRS is here to address the court at that time. And then finally, members of court, to also remind you that today at 2 o'clock in the Family Law Center, we have the IT Steering Committee. And since Commissioner Allen is going to be remote, we will not have a majority of the court present, so that will not be a court meeting, clerk's information, but it will be an IT steering committee. Members of court, we're starting to see more and more of the consent items that are coming off of the agenda as consent, and they're moving to a non-consent issue. I think what our office is going to do, if we can possibly catch that as soon as we can on a Tuesday morning, we're going to give you all each hard copy of the agendas with those items marked so that you realize what is removed from consent. That may assist you, and we'll be more than happy to do that. Thank you, Ron.
At this time, do any of the commissioners have any announcements that they'd like to make? Commissioner Allen?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I did just want to give everyone a reminder that today is the last day of early vote for the municipal runoff election. So those voters in Precinct 2, there is a board of trustees for Mansfield ISD. There's a race on the ballot, as well as the Arlington City Council. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's also a Fort Worth ISD runoff election in, I believe it's District 4. So y'all vote, those of you who live in that district.
If there's nothing else, then court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of June the 7th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of proclamations and resolutions today. The first is on the Elder Abuse Prevention Day, and I believe we have some individuals here, Lisa Scruggs from Faith-Based Community Engagement, then Ramona Black and Ron Horton. If y'all are here, would you please come on down? And there you go. Come on down here, and I'll read it into the record, and then come down and make the presentation. Whereas older adults deserve to be treated with respect and dignity to enable them to serve as leaders, mentors, volunteers, and vital participating members of our communities. And whereas elder abuse happens to men and women of all income levels, all cultural and ethnic groups, whether they are in good health or incapacitated in some way, or in poor neighborhoods and in suburbia. And whereas our population lives longer, as our population lives longer, we are presented with an opportunity to think about our collective needs and future as a nation. And whereas preventing abuse of older adults through maintaining and improving social support like senior centers, human services, and transportation will allow everyone to continue to live as independently as possible and contribute to the life and vibrancy of our communities. And whereas recognizing that it is up to all of us to ensure that proper social structures exist so people can retain community and societal connections, reducing the likelihood of abuse. And whereas in 2006, the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, in support of the United Nations International Plan of Action, proclaimed a day to recognize the significance of elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim June 15th, 2022 to be Elder Abuse Prevention Day in Tarrant County, an observation of the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Be it further resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, urge all citizens to work together to help reduce abuse and neglect of people who are elderly or have disabilities, and celebrate the accomplishments and leadership our seniors provide for Tarrant County. In witness whereof we have herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 14th day of June 2022. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. They'll get a picture and they'll send it to you.
Oh,
Or if you'd like to, you can give them that camera and they'll take a picture there. So one of y'all grab this.
You take it.
Very nice to go through time.
Yeah.
Sure you keep her thumb on there and go. Here are some certificates also. And then if anyone would go would like to make a few comments, feel free to do that. Go from there.
I guess I've been voluntold here.
I understand that.
Your Honor and Commissioners, my name is Ron Horton. I work for Adult Protective Services. I want to thank the Commissioners Court on behalf of the county for taking the time to recognize World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is tomorrow, June 15th. It was launched by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations. The purpose is to provide an opportunity for communities around the world to promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older persons by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic processes affecting elder abuse and neglect. And real briefly, Your Honor, I just want to share a few statistics. I don't know if the clock has started yet.
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. Okay, in fiscal year 2021, statewide, we had over 118,000 reports of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Of those cases, over 50,000 were confirmed as valid. Almost 14,000 cases APS received were reported by community agencies. And just in Region 3, which is Dallas and Tarrant County and some of the other surrounding counties, we had almost 3,000 reports of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And on a personal note, I'm just going to share this. I love my job. I love what I do for this community and what I can do to help those people who can't help themselves. So it's an honor to sit here and receive this proclamation. On behalf of Ms. Black, Ms. Scruggs.
Thank you all very much for what you do.
Commissioner, I'm going to lay out, Your Honor, I'm going to lay out item number 2 on.
Okay.
I have a resolution.
You're next. You're next.
Oh, okay. All right, Ms. Jackson.
Yeah, I know. He gets up here and it kind of confuses us. Go ahead.
We're all confused periodically, so. So on the proclamations and resolutions, item B, we're requesting, as we told you last week, there was going to be a resolution coming forward upon the request of Commissioner Brooks. This is a resolution which encourages Governor Abbott to call a special session to protect our children from mass shootings. This was mainly driven because of the events in Uvalde, Texas on May 24th, 2022, when 19 children and 2 teachers lost their lives to gun violence in Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. So we have prepared this resolution, and Commissioner Brooks, would you like to read it into the record?
Yes, but before I read it into the record, I'd like to say that there is a matter of urgency here, and that is that before the fall session of school starts, students, their parents, faculty, and school staff need some relief that only the legislature can grant them. This is not something that can wait. This is something that needs to be addressed now. And the resolution reads, whereas the shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 children and 2 teachers lost their lives to senseless gun violence, was the 27th school shooting of 2022. Whereas the shooting at Robb Elementary follows a long list of mass shootings in Texas where lives have been lost, communities have been devastated, families have been shattered, yet no significant legislative changes have been made. Whereas Texans who send their children to school, to their places of worship, or anywhere in our communities should not live in the fear that their children too may become victims of mass shootings and gun violence. Whereas the Texas legislature can take action to protect our children from the scourge of gun violence by implementing common sense reforms that have been debated but not implemented. Whereas The Texas Constitution requires the governor to call the legislature into special session, and 3 special sessions have been called since the end of the 87th session on May 31st, 2021. Now, let it be resolved by the Tarrant County Commissioners Court that the Tarrant County Commissioners Court encourages Governor Abbott to call a special session to protect our children from gun violence before the start of the next school year, and that the Tarrant County Commissioners Court encourages the governor to include on the call common sense policies that will protect our children. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the great seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 14th day of June 2022. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion?
We do have an audience participation form on this.
Okay.
We've got several, I think.
That would be Cherry, Langford. Please come forward.
Good morning, and thank you for letting me speak, and Commissioner Brooks for this resolution. My sorrow, my experience, and my faith bring me here today to support this resolution. I'm a retired teacher from Birdville ISD and a deacon at Broadway Baptist Church. Our governor has proven he can and will protect the lives of children, unborn children. So why must we beg him now? Our governor has proven he can and will pass all manner of regulations to protect unborn children. So why must we beg him now to protect our living and breathing children? Our governor has proven to be a man of action. So why is he sitting on his hands? Why is he seemingly waiting out the clock to run out on the 21 mutilated bodies found in rooms 111 and 112 at Robb Elementary? Our governor made it abundantly easy for a teenager like Salvador Ramos to legally purchase an assault rifle, the weapon of choice for mass shooters, a weapon designed to kill quickly and in large numbers. Why must we beg our elected leaders to change an egregious, irrational law like that? It is within our governor's power to make it harder for someone like Salvador Ramos to purchase an instrument of destruction and carry 1,000 rounds of ammo. Of course it is. Would making common sense gun safety regulations suddenly snatch the guns from the hands of law-abiding citizens? Of course it wouldn't. Of course it would not. Gun owners and gun safety regulations can and must coexist. Our governor is no man of action until he calls a special session to make Texas safer for our children. And he is certainly not pro-life until he is willing to protect the lives of all God's children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Langford.
Next is Mary Goodman. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today. I was a part of the march. Can you hear me? I was a part of the march this past Saturday. I have written letters to Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn. An 18-year-old troubled young man was able to buy an AR-15 shortly after his 18th birthday. He then walked into a school and slaughtered 19 children and their two teachers and wounded many others. The police were outgunned and took too long to breach the doors. They were outgunned. Is our solution that we want teachers to be toting AR-15s? Do we want security to be toting AR-15s and make schools militarized zones? We do not need easy access to weapons of war and mounds of ammunition. Get rid of this possibility. Now, I truly appreciate the resolution that is going to the governor, but the governor has made it very clear that all guns are going to be accessible to 18-year-olds and older. I'm still going to request that we need to raise the age limit to 21 to be able to at least not be able to buy AR-15s. I would prefer any guns. If you haven't noticed how many teenage boys particularly shoot each other every weekend because they had a disagreement. The guns, we have too many. I would like to ban the sale of AR-15s, fat chance for that. Since we cannot depend on the federal government or the state government action, it is up to our local government, city and county. Mayor Maddie Parker has stated that she would be interested in raising the age limit of buying guns. At least we could do that in Tarrant County. We just need to vote for our kids instead of our guns, and if we could please do something like that in Tarrant County. And thank you so much again for the resolution and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Ms. Goodman.
There is no other audience participations. Any other discussion before we vote? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, my colleagues, for
Commissioner,
protecting our children.
thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Allen, I believe you have a resolution at this time.
Yes, I do. Sorry for jumping the gun there, Judge and Gang. I am going to read this resolution, and in my in-person absence, Commissioner Brooks is going to present it. So we have joining us today President Tiffany Egan, as well as member Lisa Staples-Weary of the Arlington, AKA chapter. And I just want to thank this chapter for all of their amazing work. Today we're recognizing them for their 40th anniversary. They hosted a nice event several weeks ago that I was unable to attend, but they have been such great partners in the Arlington community, and certainly for my office, and even helping our county get out very valuable resources and information during the height of the pandemic. We hosted multiple events with them, virtual events, in-person events, sign-up events, and so I just wanted to make sure that I express my thanks to them. And Lisa is a nurse, so she's happy that I've got a cold. It's not COVID, but I've got a cold, and I didn't want to spread my cooties to anyone. So happy that I stayed home, as I'm sure you all are as well. So without further ado, yeah. If you see me go off camera, that's because I'm sneezing up a storm. So I will read this into the record. Whereas established at Howard University in 1908, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is the oldest Greek letter organization for African American women in the nation. And whereas their mission is to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards, promote unity and friendship among college women, study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women in order to improve their social stature, maintain a progressive interest in college life, and be of service to all time. And whereas the sorority has flourished into a global globally impactful organization of nearly 300,000 college-trained members, bound by the bonds of sisterhood and empowered by a commitment to servant leadership that is both domestic and international in its scope. And whereas the Chi Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha was chartered in Arlington, Texas on May 14, 1982, and has grown from 20 members to 400. And whereas Chi Theta Omega sponsored and presented the City of Arlington's first Black History Month observance, spearheaded numerous programs aimed at advancing women's health, economic legacies, and supporting the arts. And whereas the sorority's Arlington community of lovely young teens excelling in service, or the Acolytes initiative, continues to help high school girls strive for excellence, unity, service, and friendship. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court, excuse me, that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby congratulate the Chi Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated on their 40th anniversary of extraordinary service to the community, sisterhood, and exemplifying excellence. In witness whereof, we appear to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 14th day of June 2022. And with that, I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for the honor, Commissioner Allen, of presenting this resolution on your behalf. Would the ladies of Psi Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Fraternity Incorporated gather at the podium? Sorority.
Y'all straighten him out, would you?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Your extraordinary service, and would you have some words?
They always have the mic so high. Okay, good morning. Thank you so much, Commissioner Allen, for this presentation, and Commissioner Brooks for filling in. I'm Tiffany Egan, the president of the Xi Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Arlington. And so we are just excited to celebrate 40 years. And what we do is host programs and do community service to impact youth, impact health issues, global issues, and social justice issues. So we just want to be of service to all mankind in everything that we do. And we're so excited to be here and continue the work and the legacy of our sorority. And so thank you for having us today.
Thank you all. Okay, Mr. Manius. We have before us the consent agenda. Court?
Move approval of the consent agenda, save and accept those many items that have been removed.
Second. We have a motion second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, as we said in the intro marks on the agenda, we're now going to go ahead and move to the briefing agenda and go to item B. This concerns the annual update from the Texas County and District Retirement System. Ms. Ashworth is here to lay out that program. Just a note, I think most of you know that Mary Louise Nicholson, our county clerk, is the chair of the board of TCDRS also.
Good morning, Your Honor, Commissioners. I wanted to introduce Erica Aguirre. She's here from TCDRS to give you your annual update on the TCDRS program. We are not seeking any action this morning. We will come to you later on in the year for action on our employer funding rates. So I'll turn it over to Erica.
Thank you, Amber, and good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Good morning, Erica.
Commissioners, and of course, our chair. So nice to see you again. We also have another trustee, Judge Chris Taylor. We're very proud to have several trustees represent Tarrant County, so thank you very much for having me. As Amber mentioned, this is really just an update. It's a great one. The Tarrant County plan is an excellent example of plans we have at TCDRS. And so I thought I would just review things just briefly and give you an update on our numbers as we grow every year. We are proud to serve more than 345,000 people across this great state. And we continue to grow by employers. So we have more than 800. We grow at about 20 to 25 a year. We add districts that are governmental entities. So we continue to get bigger. And we have about $45 billion in assets, being 89% funded as a system. But I'd like to say that with our reserves funds, we're 101% funded as a system. If you include our reserves stand at over 12% of our assets.
Excellent.
Oh, backwards. Let me go the other way.
Erica.
There we go. Yes.
What's the significance of the Edsel in that picture?
Oh my goodness. Let me go back. Yes, sir. So this amazing retiree was a member of our system, and he collects cars and is very proud of the one you see behind him. And he's just a very interesting gentleman who has always been very involved with his county. And of course, the county that he represents escapes me at this moment. I apologize. But he's just a wonderful example of the great retirees we have, and he tells a great story. So we approached him and asked him if he would be in our communications, and very proudly did he pose in front of one of his collections. And so we're proud to know him.
Good.
And,
glad to know it was not a statement about obsolescence.
Oh, no, that's just a wonderful story we tell with the retiree.
Bet if we could enlarge that tie, we'd know where he was from.
Yes, I know. I should know. I really should. I'll have to send you a quick note of where he's from. Wonderful gentleman. And of course, I always like to repeat the highlights about us. When we were created, we continue to age, but we still feel so young as a system, but we continue to grow with wisdom, as you see, being established in '67. And we still receive no state funding from this beautiful state. We fund ourselves. That's very important. Our operating costs continue to stand at 0.23% of our assets. And of course, we're managed by our Board of Trustees that we're very proud to have representing us from Taylor County. So the three factors that I span the state talking about are the unique qualities that separate us from other pension systems, not only in Texas, but across the nation. And those being that we are savings-based, as you know, your members are saving for their retirement each month. And while that's happening, Tarrant County is saving for their match. So that happens over the course of their career. Very key in our development, because as the funding grows over the career, that's how we know how much that retiree will receive and earn in retirement. That's also how we know how much the costs are for the county. So we continue to keep a very, very responsible plan of funding, which leads me to my second quality. We tell each county and district in our system what % of payroll will responsibly fund their plan. And we do that every year. So on an annual basis, you're responsibly funding what is owed. And finally, the reason I speak to you in court is because these decision makers, this court, has the power to adjust benefit levels accordingly. You all run the budgets and you understand what is needed for Tarrant County. Therefore, you decide what's best for your retirement. The benefit levels are the same as they've been for many years. Your employees are saving 7% of their own money. And by state statute, their money is earning 7% compound interest. Tarrant County is matching 200%, and that is earned once they reach their eligibility and choose to retire. That is the benefit they'll receive. I always like to give updated numbers. If we look at the end of last year, over $88 million was paid to zip codes in Tarrant County. So that also includes districts and appraisal districts and other entities who participate in TCDRS and have retirees with zip codes in this county. And so you're looking at how you pay into the system, and then when they retire, if they stay in their neighborhoods and their homes from this great county, then that money goes right back into your neighborhoods. And that's very important to see how it's a very cyclical system that supports the members who earn the retirement, and then when they live here, they put it right back into their local communities. This is just a snapshot of your benefit levels and the eligibility rules that an individual must meet one in order to receive a lifetime benefit, and we offer 3. So if they are 60 with 8 years vesting, then they are eligible to retire with Tarrant County. Similarly, if they meet the rule of 75, which we take their age and years of service, they are eligible. And finally, if they have 30 years of service, and they do not have to be consecutive, so if they should leave but come back or have 30 combined years shared with another county or district in our system, they become eligible to retire. When it comes to how we're funded, I speak to that a lot because we aren't funded by the state, we fund ourselves. Investments drive our success, so our investments fund the majority of our plan, as well as employers who fund you the match that you promise, and members fund their own accounts that are earning interest. So if we were to look at this example, a benefit dollar that's paid to a retiree, if we were to break that down in cents, just one benefit dollar, 74 cents is going to be paid from our investment earnings, from our portfolio, and the money that we make on that portfolio each year. And 15 cents would be paid by the employer, being Tarrant County, that's the match, and then the 11 cents from the employee's own pocket. So together, the member, the county, and our investments fund this plan. I always like to show our portfolio, just a quick glance. While I am not an investment manager, I do provide information on where to find it. I also can provide information from investment managers should you ever have specific questions. But this is the diversification of our portfolio across and within asset classes. And this is just a snapshot of our returns. We did have it updated because, Judge, we closed last year at 22%. It was north of 20 when we last reported, but it's been closed at 22. That was for last year as of December 2021. So I'm able to show the 5 through 40-year projections. You'll notice that the TCDRS fund is in blue, and the fund does exceed our benchmarks across all periods.
Now, if it weren't for what's happened the first part of 23, I'd be arguing that your reduction on the planned earnings, which cost us some money in the unfunded liability area, and is the reason we're not over 90% right now, I would have argued with you that you ought to consider moving it back to 8%, but I'm afraid this year may have a little bit of a negative effect on that.
Yes, we had questions of, well, we did so well, why the adjustment? But we look long term. We're looking toward the future of what we expect could come based on history, and the decision was made for many factors. So I hear you, though. I do hear you.
Based upon history up until 22, you couldn't very well say that.
Yes, certainly.
You forecasted.
Forecast, that's right. Absolutely, and that's a better word. It's forecasting based on what could potentially come. Yes, sir.
And what has happened in the first 5 or 6 months of this year.
Of this quarter. And so if you look at the actual results, it's important that we point out the percentages. The threshold that we have designed our portfolio around is that gray band you see. So our goal, as you mentioned, Judge, we adjusted our long-term goal at 7.5%, but the portfolio is designed with a threshold up plus and minus around that. And so if you see a return fall within that threshold, the portfolio is designed for that to happen. We know that we're not going to hit the exact 7.5 in any given year, but we will be within that threshold. And the portfolio has performed mostly as expected, except, of course, as you see on screen, what happened in '08 and the subsequent recovery in '09, and then, of course, our positive year last year at '22. So it is going to perform outside that bandwidth on occasion, but mostly the portfolio performs as it's designed to within that threshold. So speaking to what I mentioned when I began, that you're in very good standing and that the Tarrant County plan is an example, this is why I speak to that. There are reasons why your rate decreased for 2023, and they're going to be on the screen. Of course, the first being our returns. We had a positive year, which means we do two things. We pass off those gains to employers. We also pass gains into our reserve fund. Those reserve funds serve us a huge purpose, and they're always there for rate stability over time, as we used them in 2008 and again recently when the pandemic hit. So those reserves are very important. But first, we pass off gains to employers, and you'll see the gain in the investment returns. We recognize gains for 5 years. We don't recognize them all at once. So it's a pipeline. So this is the first of 5 years that those gains of the 22% will be recognized for you all, and you see that impact. I do recognize that it's a negative 0.25, but that's actually meaning a positive experience. So then we look at the elected rate that you've had in place. That's the highest impact, which speaks to the strategy of keeping an elected rate and how well it served Tarrant County. The elected rate has been in position for quite some time, since 2015. And in 2018, you increased it to 19.5. That was very strategic on your part because you built your assets over time, lowering your liabilities, and in a great year, you see what happens. That elected rate really kicked in for you very positively. We also have demographic changes. Those are a reflection of plan experience. For example, people can leave Tarrant County and go work elsewhere, and when they separate employment, they have the right to remove their own deposits and interest. That's their money. But they cannot take the match because the match is only paid out in a lifetime retirement. So the county keeps that match because that individual chose to separate employment and withdraw their funds. They chose to pull out their own deposits and interest. So when that type of experience happens, well, the match stays with Tarrant County, and that's called a positive plan experience with added assets that you weren't planning on because you may not have predicted that they were going to leave. And so that's one example of things that happen in a given year that we track. And you had some positive plan experience for the plan itself. And of course, when we had made some assumption and method adjustments for life expectancies, you see that positive experience. So now we're looking at 12.63%. So you see that decrease, but remember, you're paying 19.5, so you do have that cushion available to you. And that cushion has served you well when you choose to pass COLAs.
And before you move that, I mean, again, from that perspective, you know, we need to make sure that we do a good job of telling people when they leave, if they leave that money in, they're still going to get a 7% return on their money.
Yes.
What's in there? The other question, you talked about the fact that you're, you know, because y'all put money away in reserves, when you put that money into your reserves, is it still labeled or clipped that says this is the amount from Tarrant County that we put into that reserve?
So our total, that's a very good question, Judge. Our total assets for reserves are our total fund is 12% of assets. So we're looking at about $5 billion. But remember, each plan has their own account, just as you mentioned. So you have your own assets, you have your own liabilities, and so you have every county and district has a percentage
of that $5 billion.
Yes, sir.
So if I were to say, okay, what is Tarrant County's share of the $5 billion you have in reserves, you would be able to tell us what that number is.
I can definitely ask for you. That's a great question. I wouldn't know.
Because I mean, in effect, what we're saying is we're allowing y'all to determine what amount of money from us or from what our investments gained in that month or in that year, we allowed y'all to determine that you were going to put X amount of that in reserves for us into the future, because in the future, 23, where our losses, instead of absorbing all whatever the loss may be, and hell, it may come back and roar back and we may end up with a profit, yeah. But if we don't, then instead of us having to recognize all of that in this calculation for next year, you're going to spread that loss historically, you spread it over, I believe, 5 years.
Yes, gains and losses are recognized over
losses.
5 years. Yes, sir.
And so that's a decision that your board has made, and I don't have any problems with that. I just want to make sure that whatever portion you put in there from Tarrant County is earmarked for Tarrant County.
That's
And
a great
stays
question.
with us.
That's a specific question, and I can go back and ask that for you. If you wouldn't mind, I can also return some more
fine.
specific data on how that works, how the reserve fund works and how it's broken down per county and district, as you say, because remember, each plan individually has its own set of assets and liabilities. And so I'm going to equate that now to reserves, and I will get back to you on that.
Thank you.
I will. Sure. Of course. Thank you for asking. I've jotted your question down here. And I do mention this just because in your history as Tarrant County, you have passed COLAs, and we do still only have two types, the flat rate and the CPI. CPI did not change. They still are only in increments of 10%, beginning at 10 all the way to 100%, which means you only have 10 types of CPI COLAs to pass, whether 10, 20, 30, etc. However, the flat rate percentages did change for 2023. You can pass a 1% and as high as a 7%, and that is due to inflation. So you can pass 1, 2, 3, all the way to a 7% COLA if that was a choice you wanted to make. And I'm certainly happy to provide any costs. Two costs. One, what would the dollar amount be to pre-fund it? If that was an interest of yours, I can always provide that to Amber and as well to the court. And the second cost I can provide is what would your rate be? What percent of payroll would it go to if you did choose to pass a COLA in 2023, depending on the kind of COLA you wanted to pass? And the deadline for that isn't until December, but I always come in the summertime because this court likes to know in advance, so you have plenty of time to talk about what your options may be. But December 15th is when I would.
And I would also remind the court, we've talked about, if we do a lump sum, that includes our CSCD employees that are funded by the state. If we do it on a percentage basis, then in most instances, that is absorbed, that is a part of that 19.5%. As she said, if we choose to not do it lump sum, then it's included in that calculation of the rate, and therefore the state is paying for the CSCD instead of the county. So a lump sum possibly being saddled with paying for the state employees.
And I believe, Judge, that's why you all have elected to keep the elected rate. That strategy seemed to work better for Tarrant County with that example. I believe I remember the discussions years ago why you chose to, as opposed to making additional contributions,
Right.
going into elected rates. And your elected rate is held for many years, and because you've kept it in place, the difference between what you owe and what that elected rate is has grown, meaning your cushion has grown, and that's the exact strategy behind an elected rate. It doesn't work in 1 or 2 years, it works over time. And that's what Tarrant County has done over time, leaving it alone. So that very much to your point, you have both strategies, one or the other. This court has utilized the elected rate strategy for many years. It has served you well. As you can see, your rate continues to decrease. But if you're interested in a COLA, you let me know, and I can give you the impact to your rate. I can also give you the cost if you're just curious. But that,
I believe we did 1% last year.
yes, sir. And after COLAs, really that summarizes things in general. Of course, you're all invited to our conference. After 2 years of not having it in person, we are back together again in Austin on the 21st and 22nd. We couldn't be more excited. And of course, Judge Whitley, you've been a guest at our conferences many times. And
Unfortunately, this year you're on the same date as our National Association of Counties Conference.
oh, we are.
So
I miss you.
I was very sad to see that because I was anxious to get more information on your Social Security person.
Well,
who
I'll
I
have to
love.
give you her information so you can visit with her. Valerie, she's wonderful.
She is a great speaker.
She is.
Erica, I was just getting ready to share what the judge shared about the conflict there, so I won't be able to make the TCDRS conference either, which that's unfortunate, but I do wish you all success for your first back in person, and I would like that same contact information.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I'll get that for you. Yes, she's wonderful. Her name is Valerie, but I'll email you all her contact information. I'm sorry that we won't have you, but thank you for letting us know, and I'll definitely get that to you.
So Mary Louise just gave you some great news.
She gave me. Let's go back. To answer your question, Commissioner, I have his name of the retiree. Yes. His name is Shelly Shamrock from Cherokee County. And he, let's see. At the very, actually, let's see. He is Shamrock Shelly Cleaver. His name is Shamrock Shelly Cleaver. That's his name, yes, from Cherokee County. He is a wonderful retiree. He has the greatest stories, but that's his name, Shamrock Shelly Cleaver. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
I was hoping that what she was giving you was the fact that the board had made the decision that they were going to create a vehicle by which we could contribute our individual money into under the umbrella of your investment managers, and with whatever restrictions they might place on that, because I do think your investment folks have done a tremendous job and would love to have an opportunity to take personal money and give it to them under whatever restrictions they choose to put on that. And I know that your attorneys, who can gum up anything, like most attorneys, will find a way to say we can't do it, but I wish you'd get them to say a way we can do it.
Well,
and I've been told to always continue to ask that question, because every time I'm around one of your folks, I make a point of making that request.
I'm glad you did, because my job is to take back any requests I get and straight to the executives, and I certainly will, Judge.
Just don't always attach my name to it, because they're going to see just one person that's always doing this. And I think I could get a lot of other people who would agree with me on that.
They're waiting for December 31st.
As anxiously as many others.
Oh, well, I'm honored that I get to be here for a presentation with you before you retire. It's been really a pleasure with Tarrant County as a whole. You have great teams. We have our trustees with Chair Nicholson, and we have, with Judge Taylor. And then we have judges like you that go to our conference, speak at our conference. You've been on stage helping other counties decide, and then you have the county that sets an elected rate. So you emulate the example of progressive funding and really building those assets over time. And on top of that, you still pass COLAs for your retirees. So you do a little bit of everything. And I was sad when I heard you're retiring, but I'm happy for you. And this is why I have a job, and we do it right. And now you get to benefit from it. So it makes me
I'd just like to benefit a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm taking your feedback as promised. And I will get back to you about the reserves.
Thank you very much.
That is a promise.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you all very much. Thank you for the job you do.
Thank you so much.
I'd move that we receive and file, if that's what we need to do.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we can now move to the administrator section. On item number 1, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court receive and file the staff report for the various weeks that are in your packet.
Move to receive and file.
Second. We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
On item number 2, this is a standing item that we have on the court. I will tell you that on item number A, there's no approval, no action necessary because there's no change in the Fiscal Recovery Act funds budgeted. On the second item, item B, we do have a listing of 5 programs that are on the agenda today that will be funded by FRF. So we're requesting on item number 2 that we receive these documents.
Move to receive and file. Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Members of the court, on
Yes.
item, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Motion passes unanimously.
On item number 3, Ms. South is going to make that presentation.
Good morning, Megan.
Good morning.
Got to get it back up for the
Got to put it back up for the taller people.
taller people.
Can everybody hear me okay?
I'm sorry, who do you work for?
One of the shorter people.
Okay. So here we go again. This morning we're going to talk about the proposed ARPA/FRF Small Business Workforce Recovery Grant Program. So on March 1st of this year, the court approved Tarrant County's state and local fiscal recovery funds budget. That budget considered findings from the Tarrant County COVID-19 Needs and Resources Assessment and allocated funding to priority areas identified in the final report that was provided by IEM. The budget allocated $25 million to assist small businesses and nonprofits in Tarrant County that have been impacted by the pandemic. So you can read more on this slide, but obviously the U.S. Treasury has very specific guidelines for the use of those ARPA FRF funds by local governments and allows for assistance to certain impacted industries, including nonprofit organizations. So let's do a quick program overview. So as you all recall, the first 2 rounds of small business assistance grant funds that were pushed out in 2020 using CARES Act funding were geared towards the business showing a financial loss. So this new proposed program is designed to use grant funds to aid in workforce recovery, retention, recruitment, training, and development, and does not require the business to show a financial loss. But it does aim to help the business recover employees that might have been lost due to closures, cutbacks, or any kind of financial hardships. So the allocated $25 million in grant funding for this program, again, would be geared towards use for-profit and nonprofit small businesses with 50 or less full-time employees with a maximum potential grant award of $27,500, provided that the company meets all of the eligibility requirements that we will go over on this next slide. So we're calling this the base eligibility requirements. And per Treasury guidelines, if the business is considered an impacted industry, which is attached to this program outline, they are eligible to receive ARPA FRF funding. So attached to the program outline, as I just said, is an impacted industry list along with an ineligible business list. The outline along with the list must be approved and adopted by Commissioners Court in order to be considered an impacted industry and to be eligible for the base award of grant funding. Along with falling into one of the business sectors listed on that attachment, the business must be physically located in Tarrant County, have 50 or fewer employees as reported on the Q1 2020 Form 941, no delinquent 2020 or prior years ad valorem taxes, tax liens, judgments, and they must have been in business on or before January 1st of 2020 and open and operating at the time of their application. Any questions before I keep going? All right, now. So for grant qualifications, we really, tried to simplify it down. So as with the previous rounds of grant funding, applications will be limited to 1 business per owner, meaning that multiple business owners are only eligible to apply for 1 business. All owners will be disclosed within the application, and then if an owner submits applications for more than 1 of those businesses, only the first application submitted will be considered for funding. All information must be submitted through the online portal, including required documentation. So for the required documentation portion, this is where we really simplified things from the previous rounds. So staff has worked with the Auditor's Office and IEM to determine documentation required that would meet eligibility and business status. So this time around, we're only asking for the 2020 tax return, a U.S. government-issued ID, and the first quarter 2020 Form 941, along with the first quarter 2022 Form 941. The first quarter 2020 Form 941 will be used to establish the number of employees that the business had prior to the start of the pandemic. All other documentation will be used to establish that the business is still open and operating, and all required documentation, again, must be submitted through that online portal. Otherwise, the application will be deemed ineligible because it will be incomplete. I have a question, Judge?
No. I guess, the only thing is that some of these businesses may have a hard time scanning.
True. And again, IEM will be fielding phone calls for individuals who are having trouble. We're hopeful that, obviously they can call our office, they can
And
call.
we're going to have that plastered all over every page so that they'll understand they can call somebody
Yes,
for help.
we will make sure it's very clear that there'll be assistance out there for everybody.
Okay.
So I want to spend a little time going over the entire grant program process, so just hang with me here. So if we approve the parameters of the program today, then we'll bring back a Chapter 381 agreement for the grant of public funds, just like we previously did with the first 2 rounds. And then we'll begin developing that online application, and we'll continue working on the web page. That grant promotional period is planned to begin on June 27th. And it'll run until the program opens, and then we'll continue on after the portals open just to continue pushing the word out. So applications will be considered on a first come, first processed basis, and we will plan to keep the portal open until August 31st or until the funding has been depleted. So I do want to focus on this slide specifically because it goes over the parameters for the review of the applications as they come in, along with the funding of the eligible applicants. And so the applications will be submitted through our online portal that will be housed on the Tarrant County Recovery page. IEM will receive and review those applications as they roll in. And then they will be responsible, they being IEM, will be responsible for determining the eligibility and the grant award amount based on the documentation that the business provides. So sample batches of those applications will be sent over to our auditor's office for quality control purposes. And those who are determined to be eligible will then be awarded their grant funds through ACH payments, along with a confirmation letter. Or on the flip side, if they're ineligible, they'll receive a denial letter that outlines the process for the appeal, which would flow through the county administrator's office and then obviously on to the appropriate people to review. Any questions on this process?
Yeah, Megan, I do have a question.
Yes.
So on the, what checkpoints will we have in place to, as we go along to getting up to that 25 million? Because I think we are probably all of the thought that this money is used up pretty fast. And so over this, a month or so of that application period, if it's first come, first process, and then payments, then how often will we get reports on where we are and how close we are to using up the 25 million that we've initially allocated?
So in discussions with IEM, we had talked about providing a weekly report that lists the businesses that were funded, the dollar amount for each of the businesses, obviously where they're located. We can break it down by precinct, city. But I think we would need to probably work with IEM and the auditor's office and the court on a weekly basis to kind of see where we're at as far as the funding is concerned, how quickly we're depleting the funds, and how fast we think that money is going to run out. So I think we'll have to work through that I think the first week that this is open, we'll have a better understanding of how fast these are going to go.
Okay, thank you.
So also just a little quick note about the funding mechanism. So after talking with the auditor's office again and IEM, both are comfortable with providing some of the 25 million pot up front to IEM so that we can fund these quicker, get the money out to the businesses quickly. I think if you'll remember last time we did do it, I believe we had to kind of wait, and it took a long time to get the money out to the businesses. So this would provide IEM with the money up front, or at least a portion of the monies up front. And obviously, again, as I said, we'd receive a weekly report on those businesses that we were funding.
How much are you going to recommend that we up front?
We had considered half of the pot.
Half?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So next, I want to spend a a little bit of time talking about promotional content and outreach. So we've been working closely with the digital media manager in our office and her team who are focused on ARPA projects to begin creating the promotional content and developing the best strategies for outreach to get the word out about the program. You can read on the slide, obviously, the variety of different tools, but it includes things such as organic social media, our website, media kits, print material, and we plan to provide that material to each of you and your precinct administrators and staff to help us spread the word. Obviously, you all know your businesses and your communities. We do plan to have a press release in coordination with the media, and we will also reach out to our chambers, cities, and other partners and to distribute the material to our businesses. Any questions on outreach? No? Okay. And this next slide just shows you an example that Regina had created, our digital media manager. This was an example of something that we could push out on social media, just a graphic. And then last, this graphic just makes it a little easier to see the proposed timeline. Obviously, if we get approval today, we will then begin developing the website material. We will begin pushing out that promotional material on June 27th. We could potentially have some of that ready for you prior to that date, obviously, so you can have it ready for that 27th date to begin pushing out. The website will be up. And then on July 11th is when we are proposing that the application portal open. It will be July 11th at noon. And then applications, again, will be reviewed on a first come, kind of first assessed basis. I don't want to, they're going to come in, we're going to review them. I don't want to say first come, first funded, because obviously that's not necessarily true. They need to roll in and be reviewed to determine if they're eligible for funding. And then again, we are proposing that the portal have a hard close on August 31st. And if the funds are depleted prior to that, we'll shut it down before then. Last is our website that's located on the screen. This will be the where people will go to actually apply and check for information related to the program. There is some preliminary information out there now. If we get approval today, we will put more information out there, obviously. But that's all of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Megan?
Just a point of
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Someone else have a-
Go ahead, Commissioner Allen.
Oh, thanks. I have a question and a comment. The question is, Megan, similar to the call for projects that we did, which I know that process is still ongoing, but that application required for an applicant to complete it like in one sitting. Will that be the same in this instance, where you can't start and save your work and then resume it?
I do not know. We haven't gone through the development of the actual application itself with IEM yet. We'll start working on that immediately after approval, but I can find out and let you know for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be helpful with the promotion efforts. And then second, as a comment, I know we had met to talk about some of the parameters of the draft plan, and I raised the concern about one of the ineligible businesses being real estate developers, commercial real estate. And I know that you had sent me some follow-up information on that, which I understand it, but I still feel like we're missing something there. And I'm not sure if that information was shared with the court, why that wasn't an ineligible business, even though we know it's an important part of mostly small business owners, especially in being able to find places to locations, brick and mortar locations for their businesses. So if you'll just talk about that a little bit, please.
Sure. So as what she's referencing is on the ineligible business list. It's the real estate / investors piece of it. They are listed on that because one, they were just as precedent. They were listed on the first 2 rounds as ineligible for our Care for Talent programs. And then second, they do not, underneath the final rule and guidelines, they don't fall into one of our impacted industries because there was not a loss shown by them. There's actually a gain. And then also there's an 8% rule that is talked about in Treasury guidelines as far as business being impacted. And they just don't qualify underneath those guidelines. So that's why they are on the ineligible list. And again, all of those businesses that are on the ineligible list were either on there the first 2 rounds and they were set by precedent, or they did not meet the requirements set by the final rule.
Any other questions, Commissioner?
I'm all done, thanks.
Thank you.
I want to reiterate what Commissioner Allen mentioned about the filling in and then being able to save the data. And then, I mean, it's extremely difficult as you're filling out an application to think you've got everything you need, and you get to the point and you say, I need that. It's 8 o'clock at night, I need to call somebody. And now you know you got to start all over.
Sure, I understand that. We'll do our best to work with IEM. I don't know as far as the first round went for this call for proposals. I don't know if it'll be the same. Kristen, do you know? Okay, Kristen's finding out right now. So we'll have an answer for you all. But yes, I do understand that concern.
Any other questions? Mr. Manius.
Your Honor and members of the court, just a point of clarification. The advance payment to IEM, it has not been formally set at 1/2 of the $25 million. We're still working, Megan and Renee are still working on that number, and we'll report that back to the court.
Thank you.
And we would look for guidance from the DA's office, because from my perspective, the devil's always in the details, and the document that clearly outlines whatever advance it is, the requirements and the risk, and who's assuming said risk and what the requirements are. I have no problem with an advance and a reimbursement basis in general, but there's a lot of details, and 1/2 seems a rather large sum.
Okay.
So does that mean you're calling the attorneys devils because you say they're in the details?
No, I'm asking them to go down in the devil details with me.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be sure we were clear about that.
They live next door. They can
We will determine what we can and can't do with that and report back to everyone.
Thank you, Megan. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you.
And I would ask for approval of the actual program outlined today.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
One more.
So we have item 4 that has been removed from the consent agenda, which
We
is
do.
Megan's piece also.
So this is our required notice of a public meeting. This one is specifically for Deloitte, a tax abatement agreement with Deloitte. As you all are aware, House Bill 3143, which went into effect on September 1st of 2019, added additional public notice, hearing, and reporting requirements for tax abatement agreements. And so this is that official notice. I'd ask for
Okay.
approval of the official notice for a tax abatement agreement to be heard on July 19th, 2022 for Deloitte.
Do I have a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Torlingossi?
Judge Whitley, commissioners, fellow taxpayers, which is everyone in the room, as the judge has reminded me, this specific entity, Deloitte, it's really interesting. The public hearing is on my birthday, July 19th. I promise I won't be here at that meeting. You're probably going to be happy about that. But I want to encourage all the other taxpayers in Tarrant County to pay attention to this issue, as well as all issues that concern tax abatements, which my conservative friends call corporate welfare. The tough thing about this is Deloitte isn't just another company or a corporate relocate promising jobs. Deloitte's been here a long time. Deloitte specifically has 80,000 employees, and millions, if not billions of dollars a year in revenue come from governmental entities across the country. In Tarrant County, that means 72 or 73 governmental entities, including the county, pay Deloitte for consulting or accounting services. The people in Tarrant County, I promise you, the homeowners, the people that live in 76104 where I live, the people that own rental properties are extremely distressed that the burden of taxing is shifted to private property owners that own homes or duplexes or even apartments, that they have to continually raise their rental because the tax burden is being moved away from the business community and heavier onto the homeowner community. Separately, if you've ever taken a donation from Deloitte for your political aspirations, if you've ever attended a lavish party by Deloitte, I strongly suggest you either recuse yourself from the vote or vote no on future tax abatements.
Any other discussion? I will make the statement that I have done neither received a contribution or attended a party of any sort.
Neither.
Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, now we could go to item number 14 under the administrator section. This also has been removed from the consent agenda. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the out-of-state travel request as outlined in your court communication.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Torlincassi.
Judge Whitley and commissioners and fellow neighbors and taxpayers, again, I just want to give you the heads up and be mindful. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that last fall, which is still within this fiscal year, you voted maybe 3-2 to approve some travel for the sheriff specifically out of state travel. And I tried to alert you at the time that that particular travel might be troubling in the nature of it, but I hope that somebody will double check. The sheriff received what is called a scholarship, which was partial travel expenses and room and board to travel to California as a sheriff's fellow for the Claremont Institute, where not only one of the board members, but virtually all of the board members are under suspicion in their involvement in the January 6th insurrection. The problem here is that what they teach during the week or so that Sheriff Wayborn and the 9 other sheriffs are taught is troubling in what it means for future control of our county and large metro counties across the country. This year they will name 10 more fellows. Those fellows are usually from metropolitan counties. And I suspect that when that school gets pulled together, that Sheriff Wayborn will be coming to look for travel reimbursement to travel and help teach that very same course.
Any further discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Ms. Tidwell?
Excuse me, we have 2 items we're asking the court to consider this morning. The first is the approval and release of the depository collateral of $7 million as outlined in your court communication.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And our other item is we're asking the court to receive and file the quarterly investment report for the period ended March 31st, 2022.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I believe we have something removed from our consent agenda for the criminal district attorney.
Yes, Your Honor, if you'll give me, oh, I'm sorry, didn't see you.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. We have a request to use forfeiture funds for investigative purposes. Specifically, the Code of Criminal Procedure 59.06 allows the attorney representing the state to use for official purposes funds that have been seized in asset forfeitures. The request here is to use those funds to assist our law enforcement partners in Tarrant County in paying their fees to the medical examiner's office for testing. So typically, these are very large sums of money. When a small department, typically a small department, has a homicide or very involved case, they can have multiple thousands of dollars in fees from the medical examiner's office, which is debilitating for their budgets. And over the years, my agreement with the police chiefs has been that if they will submit those bills to me, then I will, through our asset forfeiture funds, pay 50 to 60% of the fee to the medical examiner's office to assist them in getting their testing done to investigate crimes. Our request is that that be approved.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Torlin-Cossey.
Judge Whitley, I appreciate that the district attorney came up and explained what the money would be spent for. While I have specific comments on this subject, I want to point out that in the back paper, in the document that you were provided, at least the copy that I looked at online, it made no mention of how the money would be spent, whether it was on medical examiner fees for smaller jurisdictions or whether it would be used for any other investigative purpose. The last time I spoke on this subject, there was a longer list of items and reasons for spending the money, very few of which were actually investigative costs. I want to point out that the district attorney also has the responsibility, despite the fact that she claims she doesn't, to investigate and enforce open meeting law, especially specific criminal violations that the statute provides for. And that if you're going to take money, which is basically legal extortion from people on the side of the road, you have incentivized law enforcement to look for and take assets that are taken and not adjudicated. But if you're going to take the money, here's some suggestions on some investigative costs that the district attorney or a future district attorney should spend the money on. Send some of your investigators over to the Tarrant Appraisal District, where we have recorded just last week both Jeff Law and Randy Armstrong, as well as a number of other staffers that clearly not only withheld or omitted documents from their own board, but they've been apparently conspiring since October of last year to damage the reputation and the business model as well as the free speech of a man named Chandler Crouch. If you want to investigate, go look at the fact that they don't allow the media or the public to sit on open public meetings, which each appeal and appraisal appeal is an open public hearing in tiny little rooms. Go check and see why the law enforcement arm of Tarrant County has someone placed there to physically remove someone that's there operating as the free press. We have the video of the meeting last week. The evidence or the probable cause is clear. Mr. Mata and I recorded it, which ironically, the only governmental entity I've been to in Tarrant County where they don't record their meetings video on this scale, and it's outrageous considering there's 70-some governmental entities that count on them to collect taxes to pay the bills that are appropriate. There's lots of things that you can spend investigative money on, and the DA has a giant budget already. But the last thing we should be doing is taking cash and jewelry and those sorts of assets from people that happen to be in a vehicle or in a home where there is not any due process involved.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Judge, you have
Yes.
one more public comment.
What?
Do you have one more public comment on this? I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Bennett. Apologize, sir. I'm just being ignored.
too appreciate the DA for coming up here and explaining what the forfeiture assets will be spent on. Though I disagree with the method of doing it, but I also disagree with the fact that the district attorney office forces these white-collar crimes to be foisted upon these police departments that do not have the expertise or the acumen or the personnel or time to investigate the very thing that Mr. Thomas was talking about. I have an example, and I won't get into it, but White Sullivan ISD, I believe, had illegal meetings. And I was told by someone in her office, take it to the White Sullivan Police Department. And I said, they don't have the money, they don't have the expertise. Mr. Bennett, that's where you got to start. All right. Well, I digress, and I do appreciate her letting us know how the money will be spent. But I have a further example here, and it does involve the appraisal district. Back in 2015, Jeff Law put a letter out for the results of the appraisal district election, which all of you are familiar with. And the election itself said, signed by him, that 2 of the people that were placed on that board were placed incorrectly. And I took this matter to Mr. Jay Singleton, Mr. GK's assistant. Anyhow, it was ruled by Ann Diamond that Tad's just incompetent, and you cannot prosecute incompetency. So I further went through another open records request in October after notifying Mary McCoy that the letter was incorrect. So I put an open records request in August, realized the letter was correct, it was incorrect, the totals were. So I went in October and asked her for the same thing again. And I requested a letter to Mr. Manis. Well, the second open records request came back, augmented, changed, and with different totals. Same date, but in color, which is not representative of a copy. And it was unsigned by the chief appraiser. Well, I had enough. So I took the complaint down to the DA, and I filed it, and it was dismissed. Now, Jacqueline Wright, for having 2 homesteads, was maligned for 2.5 years, and finally they changed the charge of tampering with a county document, and then brought her forth and prosecuted her and found her guilty at the end of January. Well, I take exception to this, because when you look at this complaint, the totals were changed incorrectly, the thing wasn't signed, and you can actually hold up the copies and see they were printed differently, and it was put through the mail. I understand from federal aspects that's mail fraud. So there's different aspects here and different, I want to see the PIU unit disbanded. Lloyd Winchell and the whole group disbanded, and that money used instead of the asset forfeiture money to put to the smaller entities when I have to take an Open Meetings Act violation to the city of White settlement. It's disgusting. And I do appreciate your time, and I'll give this to GK if you want to see the document in my hand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mike, come on down.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Commissioners. We have 5 items for you this morning. The first 3 are being recommended or approved for ARPA FRF funding.
You have 5 for us?
Yes, 2 were removed from consent.
Okay, I see what you're saying, yeah.
First item is approval of a professional services contract with Terracon Consultants for geotechnical services for the Tim Curry Criminal Justice Center Elevator Tower Addition Project in the amount of $13,500.
Move approval. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our second item is approval of a professional services contract with Summit Consultants Incorporated related to the computer room air conditioning unit replacement project at the Plaza Building in the amount of $23,600.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our third item is approval of amendment number 1 to the Hanfield Hoffer Stanford Professional Services Contract for additional architectural and engineering services related to the Phase 2 interior building remodeling and new two-car garage for the Mental Health Jail Diversion Center renovation project in the amount of $12,458.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Allen?
She said yes.
You're muted, Commissioner Allen. You are muted, Commissioner Allen. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Our
Now,
fourth
item 4.
Yes. Ratification of approval of request from the March for Our Lives organization to use the 1895 courthouse East Lawn on June 11th, 2022.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion, a second. Discussion. We have a audience participation. Mr. Torlincasi.
Judge Whitley and Commissioners, I notice that sometimes when marches and protests and rallies like this are organized at the last minute, that you don't get that Tuesday opportunity to ratify it before the fact. But we wanted to alert you, you may know about some of what happened. The group that applied for this and of course had the right to participate on the East Courthouse steps and the lawn of the old courthouse was met by a separate group that organized and took their place on the lawn of this building. All that's fine. It's First Amendment. It's free speech. I believe that part of your application process includes that the group that is applying for this ratification can use the electrical outlet and include amplified sound, loudspeakers, megaphone appropriately. But what actually happened, and this may be partly a jurisdiction problem the court has to have staff sort out, is that both groups had amplified sound. So the Fort Worth PD preemptively planned to come and find or justify a pretextual stop, in essence, and ticket people on both sides of the protest for sound violations. They couldn't articulate who filed the complaint, which is pretty important because law enforcement cannot be a victim of a sound violation or disturbing the peace. The point to this is that I suppose you could construe that the second group that you're not voting on because they did not fill out a permit application could be ticketed for interfering with the first group. But there's several things you have to sort out here. Does Fort Worth PD have the jurisdiction to do this on county property? And if they do, is there any communication to clarify that the first group, the group mentioned in the agenda item, had the right to use the amplification and therefore shouldn't have been harassed or had their First Amendment rights inhibited? For law enforcement to show up, as I mentioned over and over, preemptively like this, puts a chill on both parties' free speech rights. There was no violence, and in fact, in many cases, I knew people on each side of the street and encouraged them to cross the street and communicate with each other and find common ground. The element that's missing here is that the county probably isn't aware that these things took place. But guess what? We have a video. Mr. Mata was there and recorded both the incidents of the Fort Worth police ticketing participants.
I would just observe that the city, that we, even though it is county property, we are in the city of Fort Worth, and their police can ticket wherever they want to ticket within that city, and it sounds to me like you might want to take it up with the city of Fort Worth. Any other discussion?
Just that I was there and witnessed what happened.
Okay. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our fifth and final item is acceptance of a donation of surplus furniture from Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Simpson LLP.
Move approval. Second. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Torlincassi.
Judge Whitley and commissioners, I believe it's likely that all 5 commissioners maybe embraces a Bible-based perspective that's even stronger than mine. But as I was growing up, one of my favorite parables in the gospel, the New Testament, was the story about the time that Jesus got pretty hacked off. He went into the temple and he tore up the tables of the money changers, the tax collectors. This specific entity, Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Sampson, has probably donated to some of your campaigns. They've also hosted lavish parties, whether the judge went to them or not, like at the Modern Museum, where many governmental officials across the county attended very expensive parties. The lion's share of this firm's money is from taking taxes and collecting taxes and evicting people and foreclosing on people. That is the firm that this firm is. You know it, and we all know it. To characterize giving the furniture back to the taxpayers that probably, in essence, paid for it in the first place as a donation is a little comical. I mean, heck, take the furniture, of course. I mean, vote for it. However, recognize that this accounting firm, being some of the smartest accountants on the planet.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, a law firm. This law firm, engaging some of the smartest accountants on the planet. Amazing.
Kind of messed up there, didn't you?
It's my time, sir. This law firm, who hires accountants with taxpayer money, will turn around and use this donation as a federal tax deduction.
Well, I'm going to make a couple statements here. First off, they didn't set the taxes. Their taxes were set by the various entities. They are delinquent and those folks have not paid it. So they are collecting something that was supposed to have been paid. It's very much unlike those money changers that are described in the Bible. And I appreciate very much them donating this. Yes, may have been paid for by the monies that they received for the services they rendered. And yes, I have taken contributions for them, and yes, I have attended parties for this particular group. And I think they've done a tremendous amount of good work for this area. Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 with 1 abstention.
Thank you.
Good morning. Move to receive and file the personnel agenda. Sorry, I'm a little slow this morning.
That's okay. I was surprised.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We have 3 additional items for the court this morning. The next 2, items 2 and 3, are requests to approve changes to table of organizations. Item 2, this is the county administrator's table of organization. The county administrator is requesting the addition of 2 ARPA-funded positions effective June 15th. The first position is a program manager position. It has been
evaluated by the Job Evaluation Committee and has come back at a pay grade 75. This position, or the incumbent who would fill this position, would be responsible for oversight and administration of the current ARPA program. The second position, administrative assistant, pay grade 70. That position already exists in our organization, so no committee evaluation was required. And this position, or the incumbent of this position, would provide administrative support for the ARPA program. The fiscal impact, if these two positions are approved, will be approximately $223,300 approximately. That does include fringe benefits. These two positions are being recommended for ARPA funding. And of course, these incumbents, once hired, would provide some relief to Ms. Camareno and Mr. Schaffner, who would still be involved with the program, but would hand off primary responsibility to the program manager.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The next table of organization change is a request from the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office is requesting permission to reclassify 3 vacant detention officer positions effective June 15th. One reclass would result in the creation of a detention corporal position, pay grade 53. The next reclass would result in the creation of a new deputy sheriff position, pay grade 53. And then finally, a lieutenant's position, pay grade 55. There is a general fund impact of approximately $76,140. That does include fringe benefits. And I believe you have a
audience participation.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Torlin-Cossi.
Judge Whitley and commissioners, all the taxpayers in the county. I agree with you, Judge. Lineberger is very good at what they do. Tarrant County and Fort Worth rank #1 and #5 in the country for evictions and foreclosures right now. Lineberger is very good at what they do. The Sheriff's Office, unfortunately, along with the constables, participate in that part of the process of removing people from their homes. I wanted to make a suggestion on the table of organization, though. In addition to the 3 small changes, we have no control over the fact that the people of Tarrant County voted for the sheriff that we have. He gets to have the salary, and you have oversight over the entire budget of the county, including the sheriff's budget, on an annual basis. And I propose that you draw the organization chart where you set the block on the top of the chart off to the side and put the sheriff's name and title in it. And until the investigation of the January 6th insurrection is finished, you allow the chief deputy or administrative deputy or whatever his title is, the career professional, to operate the entire organization. Just recently, 6 Tarrant County citizens, residents, were arrested in Idaho, and they're members of the Patriot Front, which is yet another group, in addition to the Oath Keepers, the 3 Percenters, and whatever that other group is. I'm sorry, my memory's pretty good, but it's not always perfect, that we clearly have connections between Sheriff Bill Wayborn and those radical right groups. You're not going to do it, but I wanted to say it publicly. The sheriff has no business traveling out of the state and participating in these types of conspiracies, nor should he be leading the organization. So let him stay home, pay him his paycheck until we clean this mess up.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I do have a question, Judge. So I did read the background on the communique, and I heard the explanation for the change, but I don't know that I understand the rationale behind it. Is there someone that can elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am. What we've tried to explain in the court communique, that we provided is that these additional resources are needed in certain areas to improve efficiency. Specifically, the detention corporal will work on error resolution and will supervise detention staff. The deputy sheriff position, if that reclass is approved, will be assigned to the bond desk and assist in that area. And then finally, the lieutenant will also assist with departmental management and specifically work in confinement. So that's the information that I have. I don't know if we have someone from the Sheriff's Department who would have any additional information.
Yes.
So I'm not involved in this, but error resolution bond, we meet every Monday with ITD because of the mainframe and changing over. Error resolution has just increased. We are, as a community in the justice system, you know, suffering, and Terry Williams, and they've been doing a great job. So I absolutely support this to make sure they have the staff to get that error resolution, the bond desk, and obviously the lieutenant to make that happen. I completely support that.
Any other comments or discussion?
Is there any from the Sheriff's Department here? Or there?
Yes, ma'am, someone's coming forward.
Okay, great, thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Judge.
No, that's fine.
Time delay.
Good morning, Calvin Bond, Senior Chief Deputy. I would just like to concur with the comments here. The staff is greatly needed for error resolution primarily, but also the new legislative mandates that we've been ordered to fulfill starting in January on victim notification, on bond condition updates. We're still working through that. So the administrative workload on this staff and our staff and warrants has increased greatly. So these people will definitely help in this regard.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. And I think in the past, when this is more so for GK, I think in the past where we talked about some of the staff changes as related to legislative mandates that we were supposed to receive information that helps us to understand that they're connected. And aside from these verbal explanations, the court communique does not explain that at all. So I just ask moving forward that for some of these changes that are directly related to legislative mandates, that's made apparent to us from the start.
Commissioner, we'll make sure that that happens.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
And I guess one of the things, don't remember exactly what number you had indicated, but I think that Fort Worth is number 50 with regards to evictions. And again, with regards to evictions being folks, renters that are put out, Linebarger has absolutely nothing to do with that. Now, if it comes to foreclosures, maybe that's a different matter, but I believe that Fort Worth, I believe you indicated a much lower number on the eviction rate. Fort Worth, again, is number 50 according to the Princeton lab studies. So, any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then we have, Judge, one additional item. This request comes from Judge Allen, Probate Court 2. She has a court coordinator who's going to be retiring at the end of July. The judge is requesting the opportunity to double fill the position as well as a waiver. The waiver is for 295 vacation hours. The double fill, if approved, would cover the period July 5th through the 31st. And of course, that would give the individual who's been selected already to replace the departing court coordinator to have an opportunity to work side by side with the court coordinator before she leaves county service. If approved, this request will have an impact to the general fund of approximately $18,000, and that does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
And
Your
Judge
Honor,
Whit,
could we have 5 minutes, please?
Certainly.
Were you done?
well, I was just going to respond to a statement, Judge Whitley, that you made when Erica Aguirre was here from TCDRS, and she made the statement about contributions that were being made on behalf of an employee who left county service, and then, of course, the county benefits from the match, right, that the departing employee leaves behind. I wanted just to make sure that you and the court understood that when we have employees who leave county service, and of course that assumes that we have an opportunity to speak with them before we leave, and we do in the majority of cases. That is one of the items that is covered during the counseling session, and we do encourage employees to leave their deposit, their monies plus the 7% interest. We encourage them to leave that money intact because who knows, they might want to come back to work for us in the future. And of course, many employees do. So we do encourage that, but as Erica explained, it's the employee's choice, and some still choose to take their money plus their interest.
And we offer mental consultation to those who do.
Pardon?
And we offer mental consultation to those that do.
Well, we do all but wrestle them to the ground, but we try.
Thank you. We'll come back in about 5 minutes.
before we begin, if I could simply respond to a request that both Commissioner Allen and you made concerning the application process and the request that we try to make sure that if someone starts, if they have to leave, they can come back. We've spoken with IEM since that time in court, and they've assured us that they're going to work forward to make sure that that happens.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's great. Thank you, GK.
Melissa? I think you're next.
Good afternoon. We have 7 items for your consideration. The first item is regarding bid number 2022-163. This is for the sale of recycled paper and 40-plus tons of sorted white ledger and 40-plus tons of sorted office paper and 40-plus tons of cardboard for facilities management per unit price, awarding to Evergreen Fiber Sales for the sorted white ledger, Texas Recycling for the sorted office paper, and Echo Fibers for the cardboard.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the next item is also an award recommendation regarding RFP number 2022-088A. This is our annual contract for offender defendant paid DWI education and DWI repeated offender program and drug offender education program for CSCD, awarding to the various vendors per section per contract terms.
Move for approval. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The third item is also an award recommendation regarding RFP number 2022-119. This is our annual contract for printing and processing of tax statements for the tax assessor collector, awarding to the various primary, secondary, and alternate vendors listed per contract terms.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The fourth item is regarding bid number 2022-124. This is our annual contract for erosion control, hydro mulch services and materials, awarding to Sea Greenscaping per unit price.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The fifth item is also an award recommendation regarding bid number 2022-131. This is the purchase of signage for WIC clinics for public health, awarding to the various vendors per section in the total amount of $29,711.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The sixth item is regarding bid number 2022-006. This is our annual contract for inmate hygiene supplies for the Sheriff's Office and Juvenile Services. We're recommending cancellation of an award to Roots Beauty Innovations. We're also requesting that Roots Beauty Innovations be removed from the bidders list for 2 years and award to the next low bidders meeting specifications. Back on December 1st, 2021, we ordered bar soap. We sent them a letter to Cure and nothing, the order was never filled for 130 cases of bar soap. We tried to work with them and give them time to fix their equipment to provide the soap. Never happened, so we're recommending removal of the bidders list.
Move approval.
Second.
Just not going to go there. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I believe item 13.
Yes. Item 13 on the agenda is approval of request for fleet fuel cards for Constable Precinct 7. The constable is asking for 3 additional cards.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Tolincasi.
Judge Whitley and commissioners, taxpayers across the county, mostly a question, but a point to be made about the fleet fuel cards. How many of them are there? How many? I understand the concept and the value in using fleet fuel cards, but has anyone checked, since Mr. Mata and I now have evidence that county employees, specifically, for example, deputies, may have personal vehicles that they outfit as if they are law enforcement vehicles and drive them to and from their work site? And if they do, in fact, have fleet fuel cards issued to them to use for fuel in county vehicles, that's, of course, appropriate. But part of Mr. Mata's network recorded in another jurisdiction, sheriff's deputies lining up to use both fleet fuel cards or going to a central location where they're able to fill their vehicles that are not approved for county resources. Don't want to out that particular deputy that we have on video, but when you're going about voting for whether it's constables or deputies or even non-law enforcement employees, this is one of the most easy ways for public servants to abuse a resource. And if there's one example in Tarrant County, how do we know there are not more?
Any questions?
Any questions? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Tax assessor collector, item number 1 was pulled from the consent.
Judge, Commissioners, the tax office requests approval of the attached list of property tax accounts where a refund is recommended. The tax office has identified the attached list of accounts are eligible for a refund due to overpayment of the amount due for the tax years and amounts indicated. The Tarrant County Auditor's Office has reviewed and approved the attached list.
Move approval, and I'd like to point out that Mr. Spencer has announced his retirement, and I would like to publicly thank and congratulate him for his many, many years of service to the tax office. I've been around since 1991, and he was here when I got here, doing the same job he's doing now. So you've served, what, 3 tax assessor collectors? Thank you, sir, for your outstanding service to the people of Tarrant County.
As we get closer to that retirement date, we may recognize you a little bit more, and we'll do everything we can. We'll do everything we can in that regard. We have a motion. We have a motion. But do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a
Second
second.
to all that was said. Second to the motion and what was said by Commissioner Brooks.
You bet. Mr. Torlincasi.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. Taxpayers that are listening or watching later online, pay close attention to this one. It's great that some people got a tax refund. I don't know whether they had to go figure it out for themselves. Of the 6 individuals, I think it's 6 properties or 6 taxpayers that got a refund in this vote today. I don't think it stops at 6 people, but the system isn't designed to audit the other way where people have overpaid their taxes and they, miraculously get a check in the mail. I'm really disappointed that Wendy Burgess isn't here today, especially given her conduct of last Friday as a non-voting member of the TAD board. Since we have it on video, it's well worth the elected officials and some of the senior staff to watch. Ms. Weilman, the chairman of the board, lost control of the meeting a couple of times, and in almost every instance, the tax assessor collector, Wendy Burgess, was the one talking over her or interrupting her, and in fact trying to direct the meeting in order to shut down public comment and participation on a specific agenda item that people had signed up for. And in fact, if you watch closely in the video, she's clearly colluding with the outside counsel, a man named Mr. Tepper, and that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg as to what happened in two 20-minute segments of the video. The point is that walking in there cold the day before, unannounced as a member of the free press and the public, and then watching the tax assessor in action along with the board, there's a lot to be hidden and cover up there. You don't have to watch the whole video, but you can see specifically that Wendy Burgess is desperately trying to keep the truth from coming out, which is that clearly both Jeff Law, the executive director and chief appraiser, and Randy Armstrong, the head of the residential appraisals, I think, specifically colluded for more than 8 months, including hiding internal documents that prove that they maliciously retaliated and attacked a man named Chandler Crouch. The reality is that if you're a taxpayer and you think you might be owed a refund, or you think that both the law firm and the accounting firms involved are coming at you extremely aggressively, you need to put your eyes closely on the leadership that is overtaxing you, and in many more cases than 6, probably owes you a refund.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? I've got one to the Historical Commission, Jacob Garcia, and I'll move his appointment. Second.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Just parenthetically, the form states that he lives in the city of Watauga, and that is according to the form in precinct 1. It is not in precinct 1. It is in either 3 or 4. 3, Commissioner Fickus says.
Okay. Change noted. Any other appointments? No. Court members, you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one additional briefing item that we would like to discuss with you this morning, and that's item number C, or item C, which is begin the discussions concerning the FY23 budget planning and processes. You might remember that last week we talked a little bit about what we might want to see on the agenda in the future. This was one of those items, and I would like to talk to you a little bit this morning about, or this afternoon, about 3 issues. One is the issue concerning the potential of a 5% homestead exemption. The other one is a discussion concerning retention pay of our employees, and then also just a general discussion as it relates to inflation and excessive inflation adjustments that we might want to consider. And so I have some handouts for the court as it relates to the first item. Commissioner Allen and Commissioner Johnson, I had sent you this in an email earlier this morning, so you'll have that on staff to pass it out. So let me begin and talk a little bit about the potential of a homestead exemption. We've worked with budget, and we've worked with audit, and we've worked with our working group to talk about if we could attempt to estimate how much an impact of the 5% homestead exemption would have on tax revenues. You might recall that we're still early in determining the amount of ad valorem tax values that we should be receiving from TAD. Obviously, we've received the May roll, we've not received the June roll yet, and we use the July roll as the official roll that we set our tax rate. But according to our calculations, we believe that a potential 5% homestead exemption would cost about $12 million in revenue for the county. And if you will look at your sheets that I just gave you, one of the things that it was interesting, and this is work that the county auditor's office did, was to determine just what type of fiscal impact something like this would have on homeowners. And I'll just go through these very quickly. For those homeowners that would receive less than $15 a year annually on a year as it relates to the benefit of this 5%, you have 61,161 accounts that would receive on an annualized basis less than $15. If you look at those that would receive somewhere between $15 and $25 on an annual basis, those number of accounts or 108,034. And if you look at those that would receive somewhere between $25 and $50 annually on this type of abatement, you're looking at about 167,000 plus accounts. So when you just look at those three, you'll see that the vast majority of taxpayers, homeowners, would receive either $50 or less. And you can see the other two columns. I thought it was interesting that when you looked at those that would receive between $1,000 and $2,000 tax abatement benefit, that there is only one account that would qualify for that. So when we talk about the impact of a 5% homestead exemption, at first it sounds very appealing. When you see what the dollars are, you can tell that it'll have minimum impact. The reason that I raised that issue is because when we talk about retention pay and excessive inflation adjustments that we might be considering, we don't believe that there's going to be enough revenue in new revenue that we'll see during FY23 to cover some of those expenses. We're also looking at different revenue sources, and we haven't completed that analysis yet. We're meeting probably 2 to 3 times a week on this, and but it's important on the homestead exemption because we have until July 1st we have to do it by July 1st in order to enact that homestead exemption. That means on June 28th, we will need to take some type of action if in fact the court so desires. We're going to be asking the district attorney's office to help us draft an order as it relates to that so that we'll have that available if the court moves in that particular direction. I know that inflation is something that is really affecting not just our employees, but almost everyone. The numbers that came out last week showed an 8.6% inflation rate, which is a substantial rate, something that we haven't seen in quite a while. And so I would ask that as you go through these discussions, and we'll have this on the agenda every week until the 28th, and then afterwards we can talk about retention and maybe some type of relief we can give for inflation, that it's not just simply affecting our employees, but it's also affecting everyone else. But right now, we're focusing on the ability to literally keep our current employees, because we have shortages. We've talked to staff level. I believe I've spoken with each one of you. My personal feeling as it relates to how we recruit and how we retain, and that we really have to focus on those particular areas, because we're simply losing employees either through retirement or for them finding a different job. And it's very hard to recruit new employees because of the labor market and those that are willing to come to work for county government and government as a whole. So I don't have a lot more to talk about on this right now. I will tell you, as I said, we've been meeting, and we're going to continue to meet. We'll more refine those numbers for you as we do that analysis. Also, as we move closer to the 28th, what we're going to find, we will probably have that June roll, that ad valorem value roll from TAD. I spoke to Mr. Law yesterday, and we believe that we're going to get that around the 23rd or 24th. So that'll be something that we can also take into consideration. And Your Honor, members of the court, that's the information that we have. And obviously, this was something that we have as a discussion item, and we're anxious to hear your discussion and any direction you may have for the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Manius.
I think any discussion we might have today on this would be premature. I suggest that we postpone any discussion to a future meeting.
I agree. Okay, Commissioner Allen?
I was just saying I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We have a couple of audience participation. First is Tammy Lehman. Good morning or afternoon.
Hello. Judge Whitley and Commissioners, my name is Tammy Lehman. I'm a volunteer with the Citizens for Election Integrity Texas, and my focus with them right now is to help them audit the physical ballots from the March of 2020 primary election. April 19th was the first day that we requested to see those physical ballots. The 22 months for preserving those records had expired. Well, now the EA is telling us that the earliest that we can access those ballots is July 11th. July 11th, that's 3 months after our initial request. Well, there's 2 points that I want to make regarding our working with the EA thus far. First, after our April 19th request, the EA decided that they were going to scan the ballots so that we couldn't, if we damaged any of the ballots during the inspection, at least they would have the scanned image. Well, that makes sense, but what makes more sense is to actually scan and save those images during an election rather than waiting after the 22 months. Those HART machines will do that. And I want to thank the county also for making those images public. They posted that on your website last week so that the public has those available. But a word of caution, when you click on the link, the file is 18 gigabytes, so it may be difficult for some of us to access that from our equipment at home. And then lastly, the EA provided us with 8 rules that we must follow when we're going about this examination. And I will hand out the rules that they gave us after my comment. Briefly, those rules say that we must only go in during business hours. Yes, that's not a problem. But no more than 4 people at any time can access, and we can't open more than 2 boxes of the 400 boxes at a time. We have only 10 days to complete this examination. Well, here's what that means in numbers. So there's 286,000 ballots, and that means that each person must look at over 7,000 ballots a day for 10 days. And we compare that to the time frame that the EA had for the Secretary of State required manual recount. That team had 21 days to examine only 9,000 ballots. We do appreciate the cooperation that we've had thus far with the EA. However, the law is clear. It provides the public the right to gain this information in a prompt manner. 3 months in our mind is not prompt. And also, expecting a person to manually inspect 7,000 ballots a day, that's impossible. We are also going to be talking with Mr. Manimus about election integrity methods, and we're all after the same thing. We want election integrity.
Thank you very much. You realize we cannot make any comment because it was
Yes.
not on the agenda.
Yes.
Thank
I
you very
have
much.
the handouts. Who do I give those to?
Mr. Manius.
Okay.
Next is Mia Wang. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Judge Whitley and the commissioners. My name is Xiaomei Wang. I used to work as a content and data analyst for a living. I have been a poll watcher in Tarrant County and observed the 3 elections recently. Today, I would like to talk about our electronic voting system ballots, electronic voting system ballots, okay? So, here. This is the in-person ballot. This ballot actually is not a real ballot. When you look at the ballot cast in our polling locations, it was a record of the elections by a voter. Anyone could read through the list of which race and who had been selected. Then, there is a QR code on the up left corner of this record, or called voting ballot, in-person ballot. This code is not a human readable thing. So the voter is no way to know what it is. For example, I would verify my selections before put my ballot in the scanner to cast it. But I'm not able to verify if the QR code containing the right information. So my question is why this non-human readable code is necessary on our ballot. It makes my vote not created simply by my selections. The creation of a QR code on my ballot is totally not transparent. I cannot verify it is relevant to my vote at all. So after I think through about this QR code on our in-person ballot, I'm really concerned. I have to add this item to my question, this item to my list for questioning our election integrity. I would like to share my thoughts about this with you today. And also, I'm looking forward to hearing and learning you have an answer for it. I'm really serious about this. I think I will talk about the study on the ballot next time for something I think is very important. It's not additional and necessary thing, but it's something missing on our voting system's ballot. Thank you very much.
Rick Scharfenberg. If I got anywhere close, I'm amazed.
Did a good job, Judge. Thank you, Judge, and the commissioners. What I want to talk about today is an article that it's a number of things, but I looked at an article that says going from bad to worse, from internet voting to blockchain. And inside this article, it's an academic article by MIT, people from MIT. And I'm not going to go into blockchain and stuff like that. They're not in favor of it. But what I found interesting in the article was there was a minimum election security requirement. And I'll give you the document here. And one of the minimum requirements is what they recommend is have an evidence-based election. And they define an evidence-based election as where the election officials should not only find the true winner or winners for an election, but also, and this is important, also provide the electorate convincing evidence that they did select the proper winner. So it's not only conducting the election correctly, but having the evidence to the electorate that the election was conducted in an agreeable way. So part of this in this article, it says that the election system, in order to comply to this evidence-based election, has to have two components. One is auditability, and that means creating an evidence trail that can be checked and confirmed that each relevant part of the system is operating well and it's also running correctly. And then the other part is that it needs to be auditable, okay? So it's not just the auditability of it, but it actually has to be audited. And those two components will support an evidence-based election. In our elections in Tarrant County, one of the least transparent aspects is the actual vote counting. And that may not be a problem, but a lot of the software is proprietary and we just can't see that. But in order to mitigate those errors, what we need is comprehensive audits, and I don't think that we have that at this time. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you. One of the things that I would encourage all of y'all with regards to the election is to go back and watch our election workshop.
I attended it.
And the fact that we have a paper ballot, I don't care. And the fact that it was audited according to state law and we passed perfectly. The final person commenting is Mr. Tolancasi.
Judge Whitley, commissioners, taxpayers, and voters watching online and later, Judge, you might have forgotten that when people come here, they're coming here to ask for help or to offer help. Under the state law, during general public comment, the elected officials are not allowed to respond to the speaker. A lot happened last Thursday and Friday. We have it all on video. The county administrator has agreed to accept the video that highlights the specific parts of the TAD board meeting on Friday. Manuel Mata will get that to him by email. It'll be professional and appropriate and accurate and unretouched. But I want to tell you a couple of the highlights. The good guy last Friday was a man named Rich Diott. He's a friend of mine. I don't agree with him on a lot of political things, but we're both Aggies and we agree that lying and cheating and stealing shouldn't be allowed. If he wasn't there to facilitate the truth, the other board members would have let it pass. Mr. Pompa worked really hard to try to characterize the dispute as a personnel matter and that it should be shoved into executive session. Then Mr. Pompa pivoted and said that it was a litigation matter and that it should go to executive session. The county tax assessor, Wendy Burgess, jumped along with that and prompted the outside attorney several times, as you would see in the video, to try to construe that it wasn't a public meeting matter. Jungus Jordan sat quietly the entire meeting and never made a single comment on a single subject till the very end, long after the most important thing for you to be aware of took place. The most important thing in terms of fiduciary responsibility and agency, Ms. Wildman finally said, once the documents were physically handed to the entire board that proved that Jeff Law and Randy Armstrong were lying and colluding, Ms. Wildman said, Tad is involved. I went in the day before and I videoed, as is my constitutional right, and a very important thing for the regular mainstream media and the public to be aware of, to see the joke that is the appraisal district appeals process. I got the video, the room where an agent representing hundreds of pieces of property sat while the three-member panel said over and over that their position was that this agent did not have fiduciary agency and could not speak on behalf of the property. So every single appeal was negated by that statement. I also sat in and videoed an individual's appraisal appeal, and that was an equal joke. We need a lot more scrutiny as to what really is happening over there with 200,000 appeals in the last 12 months.
Your Honor, I do not have any more audience participation.
Okay, at this time, we will recess our open meeting to proceed to close to discuss items exempted under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. Having returned from closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.